and you're helping people receive well. And I find it very intriguing because I see it in my practice too. Why is receiving so difficult for wealth creators?
It's interesting how often when I'm guiding people through these practices of exploring the flow of giving and receiving in their lives, they recognize that they have difficulty receiving. So I think the first thing is having the awareness. When we have trouble receiving well, it also ends up blocking what someone is trying to do by giving.
Mm,
So sometimes that's like it's complex, right? Because sometimes someone's not giving you a true gift. And you
yes.
can feel that. So receiving well may be more complicated than just being open and the flow is happening. There's so many things that go on, especially when money is involved. Many people think receiving is like a lesser thing
Mm-hmm.
or a needy thing. And I had the most beautiful experience in one of the workshops I was leading, that one of the family wealth professionals on the call had a daughter who was very sick.
Mm,
And he had always been a really generous giver. And at this time in his life and in his family's life, they had to open up to receiving from their community for everything
mm,
from others. And when we went through this reflection of looking at giving and receiving in our lives, it was so healing for him to realize, oh, I had to change course here. I'm now in a place where I'm receiving more than I'm giving out. And I need that in order to be there for myself and my family right now. And the look on his face was just priceless. It stayed with me. I can still see it, and it was years ago.
Welcome to Talking Billions. We talk about big ideas, big inspirations, big topics. We take on the hardest topic of all, money. How to make it, save it, keep it. But our conversations lead us to an even bigger question, what it means to live a rich life beyond money. My guests share their practices, principles, and evergreen wisdom. I'm your host, Bogumil Baranowski, author, TEDx speaker, and investment advisor to wealth creators with patient capital and an infinite investment horizon. I work with families and individuals who aspire to grow wealth over a lifetime and generations through disciplined, thoughtful investments in durable quality businesses while giving money meaning. Join me on this quest to unearth and share the wisdom of the ages. Let me share with you the podcast program disclosure statement. Blue Infinitas Capital LLC is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by the firm's employees and podcast guests on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Blue Infinitas Capital. All the statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. The information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. None of what you're about to hear is investment advice. My guest today is Jen Laun, a well-being facilitator who guides family wealth professionals through transformative experiential learning focused on the sacred flow of giving and receiving, the concept of spiritual capital, and helping people, especially successful wealth creators, learn to receive well, not just give. Jen, how are you? So nice to see you.
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited. We had a wonderful conversation a few weeks ago, and I was really looking forward to having you here with me and record this time. I have so many questions about the work that you do, but I want to start with the early days, if you allow me. I'm curious about your childhood upbringing and how do you think that time shaped you?
Well, I have very loving parents. I'm an only child, and my mom's side of the family is Italian and big and lots of warmth. And I had a lot of attention, a lot of love, a lot of freedom to be myself. So I think that, you know, my parents encouraged my creativity and imagination and drive, for what I was interested in. And that was really formative for me. I had a lot of support and a lot of love and encouragement to just be me.
I like the sound of that, and I think you took it places and got very creative about how you express it. You shared with me something that really struck a chord with me. And speaking of the early days, you have a 6-year-old friend, Sam, who says, Jen, you help people. Can you tell us what it means and how it expresses itself in your life? How do you help people?
That was a really fun day. It was last year. This is my friend, my really good friend's son, Sam, and we were out having lunch on a nice fall day. And I don't know where this came from in conversation, but internally, I had been searching for my title in the world. And I was struggling, well-being facilitator, I don't know, and all these different things. And what I really do is help people, no matter what hat I'm wearing. And so this little boy who we love each other, we were just having a conversation and he asked me, Jen, are you going to help people today? And I said, yeah, I'm going to help people today. And he said, yeah, Jen, that's what you do. You help people. And I was like, that's it. I don't need a fancy title. I just help people. Whether I'm acting as a healer, whether I'm sitting with a friend, whatever it is, it's coming from that, how can I help place?
Mm.
And that's my natural thing to service is I want to be a helper. And so I needed just this little boy to clearly show me that. I didn't need fancy words.
It makes me think of my own upbringing. I grew up with 2 doctors in the house. And I remember watching them, how they would go out of their way to help people. And it was the first decade of my life was communist Poland, so they were paid very little to be doctors. I didn't really connect the fact that being a doctor is a well-paid job until later on in my life. But if there was an accident on the road, I remember my dad jumping out of the car and walking over to see if he can help before the ambulance would come. And there was no thinking of, what's the invoice, how he can bill. There are so many situations where he could go and help. And my grandmother was running a senior citizen home, a public service, and she would help people. So I grew up with this idea that we're here on this planet to do something for others. And I do it in the investment profession, helping people, guiding them on their journey. And I love hearing what you're sharing because at the end of the day, no matter what we're doing, I think it's a worth question to ask ourselves, how are we helping? We think it's a product, it's a service, but how are we actually helping? And you're helping people receive well. And I find it very intriguing because I see it in my practice too. Why is receiving so difficult for wealth creators? And what's at stake when they do or they can't do it?
Yeah, it's interesting how often when I'm guiding people through these practices of exploring the flow of giving and receiving in their lives, they recognize that they have difficulty receiving. So I think the first thing is having the awareness that, oh, I don't like to receive, or it's not easy for me to receive, or maybe I'm not really open to receiving. So there's so many things to explore about receiving. And I think many people just having that recognition is, oh, I have trouble receiving. And then they can do that exploration of why. What is it? Is it circumstantial to what's going on? There's so much to explore there, but it shows up in many ways. But when we have trouble receiving well, it also ends up blocking what someone is trying to do by giving. So sometimes that's like, it's complex, right? Because sometimes someone's not giving you a true gift. And you
Yes.
can feel that. So receiving well may be more complicated than just being open and the flow is happening. There's so many things that go on, especially when money is involved or different things like this. So it really depends what you're talking about. But I think in general, many people think receiving is like a lesser thing or a needy thing. And I had the most beautiful experience in one of the workshops I was leading, that one of the family wealth professionals on the call had a daughter who was very sick. And he had always been a really generous giver. And at this time in his life and in his family's life, they had to open up to receiving from their community for everything from others. And when we went through this reflection of looking at giving and receiving in our lives, it was so healing for him to realize, oh, I had to change course here. I'm now in a place where I'm receiving more than I'm giving out. And I need that in order to be there for myself and my family right now. And the look on his face was just priceless. It stayed with me. I can still see it. And it was years ago that happened. So you just never know. And it's so important to take the time to explore for yourself.
Do you think that it's easier to give than to receive? And related to that, I meet people that find it very easy to give. They would either buy something for somebody else, that even gift something to themselves.
Yeah.
I see individuals in many families I work with that think that way, and maybe I do too sometimes. But as you said, you can't have receiving without giving. You can't have giving without receiving. Why is it so hard to receive? What gets in the way? Is it the upbringing? Is it the self-reliance? Is it a sign of maybe weakness?
Yeah, I think it's very personal for people. I think some of it may be how you were raised or how you're to think of things. But like my mom is so generous and she loves to give, and she receives from me and different people, but it's not the natural flow for her. And when we started working with this, like, it's an act of generosity to receive, to be open and willing to receive from another, because it gives someone else the opportunity to give. And when you're not open to receiving, you're actually blocking that other person who may experience joy by giving to you. And so my mom really took that to heart, and she started using it in the family. So I have a very, my cousin's very generous, likes to pick up the bill at dinner and stuff like that, much more comfortable, doesn't want to be on the receiving end. And my mom pulled him aside at a family dinner and said, please, give your friend the opportunity to pay for dinner and receive that well from them, because they want to do this for you. So like starting to just have these little simple conversations, I think different people have struggled with receiving for different reasons. But I think just taking it back like that and feeling like, oh, would you like to give someone else the opportunity to give? And I think reframing it that way helps.
I find it fascinating, and I want to bring up our mutual friend, James Hughes, whose birthday it is, by the way, today, whenever this episode airs. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Jaya. We're talking about you. I think you talked to him last week. I'm talking to him next week. But Jay has this idea of a gift with warm hands. And it really stayed with me. And I brought it up in many conversations. But a few months ago, I was traveling. I was in a room invited to dinner, and it was younger members of many families with substantial financial capital. And I asked them about how they give, and they thought, what do you mean? And I said, with even the smallest gesture, I mean, these days, tips in restaurants in many places, New York itself included, have gone up quite a bit. And there are moments where a lot of us don't feel like paying that tip, right? And the other side immediately knows. And you signed it, but you really didn't feel like signing it, right? I told them, you can observe yourself throughout the day, how many moments you give something, and would you say it was a warm hand giving it, even if it's $1.50 or whatever it is that you round it up for a cup of coffee. But it's a practice and it's exercise, because then we're put on the other side of receiving. With the receiving side, you and I interact with families that have financial capital as well, and then the next generation, I think, is put in a peculiar position that it's not talked about enough. We're thinking about the giving. Let's set it up in a certain way. It's passed on in an efficient manner, and we think about the legal structure and the financial structure and the investment consequences. So the giving is taken care of. I don't know if it's done with a warm hand, but it's taken care of. But I've been in rooms and I've been part of conversations where I feel like the other side was not prepared to receive.
Yeah. I think that's so common. And sometimes they have no idea that anything's even coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, that's huge just to begin with, is there's a lack of communication and transparency. And, these exchanges are such lovely opportunities for people to get to know each other
Mm-hmm.
and talk and listen, be heard, all these different things. So I think that it's like our professionals don't take those opportunities enough to facilitate those types of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
They're not always easy to have. And sometimes they're not really verbal conversations.
Mm-hmm.
They are expressions. They may be expressed through a drawing or a piece of art or different mediums like song or video. And not everyone is able to express their feelings in the same way. So I think like having these open times for families to connect and have open expression and using different modalities for different people. Some people just aren't comfortable coming to the table and talking.
Mm-hmm.
And even saying, oh, these are my dreams. This is what would help me receive well. This is what I want to use this for. Whatever it is around receiving, it's just, there's not a lot of care given in that way.
I wrote a piece on my Substack. I called it The Invisible Wealth, and it got a lot of response of all kinds. But the idea for me was that these days you could have substantial wealth and be the richest person at a dinner table, and nobody knows. It's in an investment portfolio. Back in the day, and I'm thinking of history, the largest brewery in town, you would know the family that owns the brewery. It would be obvious. And the family definitely knows, and the kids know. They're growing up in the vicinity of that brewery or whatever it is. But these days, people get surprised, and I've been in rooms when people are surprised. They didn't know. And it happens later because we live longer. I think that's a big part of it. But I was in rooms when people in their 50s or 60s find out about an inheritance, and how would they know? It's an investment portfolio that grew over 50 years. It's very substantial, and they get surprised, and they're in no position to know how to receive it. And again, Jay talks about the challenge of integration. How do you integrate this phenomenon in your life? What are your thoughts? How do we go about integrating this, what could be a blessing?
Yeah, I mean, I went through something a little bit similar in a smaller scale. When I turned 50 a couple of years ago, my parents surprised me with this VW Westphalia camper,
Yes.
and they just drove it up to my house. And I was so excited, but I had no idea it was coming at all. And I went through 24 hours afterwards of this immense emotional reaction. Like the first was, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Wow, they got me this thing. And then it's like, oh, well, I don't know how I'm going to take care of this and how am I going to use it? And it's old and I've got to think about all these. I went through all these different, just really intense emotions and like some pretty extreme anxiety and all this stuff. And it was like, wait, I just got this gift that I love. And here I am having this like crazy reaction to this. Like even calling my parents up and saying, I don't know if I can keep this gift because I just don't know, and I think like, and that was just a small gift and it was something that I totally loved and wanted. But that was my reaction. I had like 24 hours of craziness. And I just was kind to myself and was with that. But just think about how that can translate in all these family situations is that it's not rational. It hits you and you just don't know where you are in that day when this come towards you. So there has to be a lot of grace and patience and space for this process. It's not like, oh, yes, I've received this, we're good. Like, even if you have the preparation and the talks, there still may be this really strong, unexpected emotional reaction that comes from your stuff. And I think it's great if we can all have kindness and compassion around that, because I was surprised that I didn't receive well. And I learned a lot from that experience because I'm so aware of my emotions and work so much on these things. And it really threw me for a loop.
You can really do that. What do you think would have prepared you better? So if you had a chance to redo it and maybe guide your parents through the gifting side of it, what would have to happen for it to be a different experience?
I think it would have taken the fun out for them, because it wouldn't have been a surprise. Like if they had took me shopping to go pick out my own bus, then maybe that would have been different because I would have had more control over choosing or deciding if I was ready to have that in my life or something like that. But it would have taken the fun out of it, I think, for them. And it was like, one of those, you turned 50, hooray. Here's something that I used to have one of them when I was in college. So they knew I wanted another one. So it was a really, big long-term surprise for them, to do that. So I think my comfort would have been taken away some of their excitement and joy.
Yeah. Well, this is the moment where, and I love that story, that they are there to see you enjoy it. I think there are many gifts unfortunately, those that are giving are no longer there. And I think that happens in your world as much as it does with my clients, where the next generation receives something and I might be the only person in the room that can retell the story and give context of why it's coming to your life. And the question's never really asked. A few years later, they asked me, so did Dad know that this is coming or going to me? And I can tell them that years ago, your dad decided that this is something that's for you. And I think there's always this question, and sometimes very open question, or ask, I wish I knew. And in this case, I think obviously, it was a huge surprise and fun for your parents to surprise you. But I think if if you knew it's coming, it would have taken it maybe a little bit away from the surprise element for them. But I think maybe you would have integrated this gift a few days or a few months ahead. It's like, there's a gift coming and I'm ready for it. It's a fun thing to think about, how we receive, how we give, and who can be that bridge that can guide us on the other side of the experience, especially in moments when the person that's giving is no longer there. Jen, you have this framework that I really like and I want to explore more with you. You say, gather, live, love, and give. And love is at the center of that framework. Walk us through that framework.
Yeah, this came as I was preparing for a session with Abacus Planning Group, the professionals there. And this was the first time I piloted it. Like as I was working with them, I just kind of had this idea, like I wanted to have this expansive view of legacy instead of, just focusing on what will I leave behind when I'm gone. I wanted to look at focusing on what's really meaningful to me in my life right now. What have I gathered? What have I continued from my family traditions, or what family traditions have I started in this life? And how can I pass them on while I'm living to share my love, show my love, and how meaningful this is to me? So this came as a kind of a show and tell exercise. And I was given the idea by my mentor, Jim Grubman, to do this more show and tell, multimodality type thing. And the great thing too is if I had been working with a multi-generational family, little kids could have participated too in this exercise, which is really wonderful. So it really focuses on, it's very personal. So it focuses on something that's really important to you that you want in your life right now, and that you love and treasure, and that makes your life worth living, and that you want to pass on now while you're living into the world in a certain way to your loved ones, however it is, but so that it carries on. And so the wonderful thing was that people brought everything. Some people brought cherished recipes and stories, and one woman even shared something from her very sacred prayer place that she had set up in her home. And it was just tremendous to see what people brought and told stories about. The whole point is like it brings right in front of you what's most important, what do you treasure, and you're getting to tell that story. And then the awareness comes, right? Am I living like this? If this recipe is so important to me, have I shared it with anyone? If this story is so important to me, have I told it to anyone? And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is kind of. Sometimes the answer is no. And having this awareness is like then to bring it into action, right? Oh, I want to make sure I'm doing this. And how can I bring this into my life more? But it's really about taking stock. What's most meaningful to me? What makes life worth living? What can I pass on now while I live that will carry on all those generations?
I like the sound of that. There are many capitals, and I think a lot of attention goes to the financial capital. But you talk about the spiritual capital, and you describe it as a boundless resource that doesn't deplete, and it's accessible in every moment. Can you talk about an example when someone ran out of the other capitals and was tapping into the spiritual capital that kept them going the way you just described?
I think we tap into that spiritual capital all the time throughout life, whether we are conscious of it or intentional about it or not. It is that time when we get a bad diagnosis, or we have very challenging things come up in life, it's like, where do you turn when you don't have the personal strength or capacity to meet life? And I believe that's where we turn, whether it's not religious capital, spiritual capital. It's something that is there for all of us, no matter who we are or where we are. It's our only true boundless resource. So no matter what we draw upon it, it doesn't expire. We can all draw upon it at the same time, and there's still plenty there. So it's a place where we can receive. It can help us get through things that we never thought we could possibly get through. I would suggest that that's when we draw on our spiritual capital. Whether we know we're doing it or not, I believe that that's what gets us through those times in life that we never believed we could get through. And we all have those times.
Do you think we can surprise ourselves, like thinking ahead?
Absolutely.
And then in the moment realizing, wow, I'm capable of so much more than I thought?
I think that meeting life, we all see what's possible when we are meet what life brings us. I mean, there's so many people that I've witnessed, I'm sure that you've witnessed, that we've all and had our own experiences, the things that we've overcome in our own lives. It's like we get that little boost from someplace. It's like, where did that come from? How did I when that came towards me, I thought I was done. I didn't think I had any more in me. I didn't know where to turn. Whatever those words are, our spiritual capital is truly that refuge, that resource. And it's like, it's there like this. Yes, it can help if we have the intentionality to connect to that and live in that way. But even if we don't, it's there.
We need angels in our lives, and to me, Jay is one of those angels in my life. He knew when to appear in what way at different points of my life, and I'm very grateful. So if he's blushing today on his birthday, I'll let him blush. Jen, I think we're living in a world where we measure things, we quantify things, and especially in the world that we're overlapping here and talking about, you can track every dollar, you can see the statements. We're talking about things today that we can't measure. How do you help people recognize the value of something that we feel, we acknowledge, but we may not be in a position to measure?
Yeah, I think there's so many ways, right? I think that's why I love to lead people through these kind of experiential, guided reflections or exercises, because I want them to bring to mind those feelings, like that, something that when you recall, what am I most grateful for in my life right now? And when we do that, there's part of us that brings that to mind right in front of us. And I think when we really feel what's most important to us and see that, it helps us see how much we value that. Could you imagine life without that? And I think, being grateful and looking at it could be something very small, right? It could be someone brought you a cup of coffee today, and that, small act of kindness meant a lot to you. But thinking about what you're grateful for, again, it's just these things that help bring what's most important to us right in front of us. And I think I can't imagine that on anybody's deathbed that they're like, oh, I wish I worked more. Oh, I wish I had more in stock, or whatever it is that you can measure. I don't know anybody who's had that experience. And I think it's that we want to help people remember and connect with what's what's so valuable right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be, yes, the financial capital helps support all these other things. Of course, there's something to be grateful for in it. But I think these immeasurable things
Mm-hmm.
are the things that, bring meaning to our lives.
It makes me think of that story of somebody passing away. It's in the newspaper and people are talking about it. And then somebody asks, how much did he leave? And somebody says, all of it. And I think, I think it's a great reminder that, money has its limits to what it can do. And those things that we can't measure, I think can outlast money in different ways. Jen, I want to bring up something else that came across when I was getting to know you and reading more about your work. I can confess that I spend too much time in my mind, and sometimes I can't really tell where I'm spending the time because some of the problems or the issues are almost virtual. A client that's based somewhere else is asking about something that's affecting something else, and it's in my head, it's in this virtual space somewhere. But I leave my body, like I'm working, I'm thinking, I'm writing an email. And I almost, if you ask me, are you sitting, are you laying down? I don't even know because I'm all in my head. You run workshops where you help people get into their bodies. And I think that's something that we need these days more so. I think we have too many different ways to leave our bodies. Not to get
Isn't
to
that the truth?
I play tennis and I surf. And I have to tell you that unless the physical activity requires 100% of my attention. And when you surf, you either are there or you're underwater with a board on top of your head. So you don't really have a choice. But these are the moments where I realize I'm really here. I'm in my body. Tell me about the experience of teaching professionals, bringing them to their body. What do they discover? What are the reactions? What do you see?
Yeah, it's really wonderful. And the great thing about working with other financial professionals is that I've done their jobs before. Mm-hmm. So I know what it's like to be in the weeds, to be, all the details of the things that we're looking at all the time. So a lot of the times I just simply begin with, can you feel your feet? Mm-hmm. Do you remember that you have legs and feet? And it's like, and just that simple thing, like I'm doing it right now as we talk, like, oh, I feel my feet. Mm-hmm. I have feet. I have legs. I'm attached to something. And that's a start, right? And for some of these professionals, they're busy. Everybody's busy. Life is busy. They've got families. Mm-hmm. Kids, lots of responsibilities. So there's so much busyness in their life. And so in this last workshop that I did, I actually, after lunch, I led a half an hour of Qigong. Mm-hmm. And it was so well received. People loved it. I was only going to do 10 minutes. And when I was watching what was happening with the 35 people in front of me, mm-hmm. I just went, okay, we're going to go for a half an hour because I could just see their beings eating it up. It was so needed. And it was preparing them for an exercise actually to explore their vital energy and get to have awareness of their vital energy as a way to see their capacity to help. What's my vital energy? So without being aware of your body and how it feels, mm-hmm. how can we know how much we can be available to help?
True.
So it's like combining these things. So helping people be in their bodies and having awareness how their body feels, how much energy they have or don't have. Mm-hmm. Just being aware of that is so important to help us take care of ourselves and to take care of others. And I think it's something that a lot of people are unaware of. Mm-hmm. So I try and have these moments, even if I'm teaching virtually, to help people get into their bodies, to slow down. Sometimes to just we stand up and just shake out and stuff like that. It doesn't matter. Something to remind us that we're more than just what's going on up here mm-hmm. and out there, that there's this home here.
For some of us, including me, less versed in the topic, what is Qigong?
Yeah, Qigong is wonderful. It's like, it comes from, it's a part of, I see it as a part of Chinese medicine. But it's a, you could call it a mindful movement, not like yoga as far as it's much more gentle and subtle. So no matter what kind of physical shape you're in or what age you're in, or even if like you're having ill health, you could still practice Qigong. And it's really about connecting with the vital life force of Qi and feeling that move through your body. So your relationship with the vital life force, your body, and with your environment, because all has the Qi, like all has this life force, all life has this. So as we interact with nature, we interact with our body, with others, Qigong is really paying attention to all of that. And it's just this gentle movement. And I use it personally as healthcare. I have a weekly practice with my friend Roxanne, and I've been doing that with her for I think 4 or 5 years now, every week. And I see it as just like I would do acupuncture or go get a massage, I see it as part of my healthcare. So it's really wonderful. And if someone wasn't able to be on their feet, they could do it sitting down or doing some movements laying down. So it's very nice that way too.
What I'm hearing for my own benefit is being really present, being really here. I think coming back to your body. I have this ritual of writing to my Substack readers, and they're always surprised that I'm writing to them. I'm just curious who's reading. And I'll have to share with you that a lot of them think that it's not a real person writing to them. They assume it's a bot, and I say, no, I really read those emails. And I think in this virtual world, we have doubts if it's a real person on the other side. But sometimes we're sitting down with somebody, and they're so preoccupied with the phone in their hand that the actual person is not even there. Maybe their body is, but they're not there. And I think we're all experiencing those moments too often these days where both in the virtual sphere, we doubt that there's a real human on the other side. And sometimes when the real human is right in front of us, we know that they may as well be somewhere else.
Yep.
Coming back to...
Yeah, and I think like too, it's like some people forget to just take that moment and, oh, let's have lunch with my friend and put the phone away.
Yes.
And not touch it or pick it up. And like, let's feel what it feels like to be in each other's company. And let's feel what it feels like to step out into the yard to water our plants and have our feet on the ground and our hand on the hose. And oh, look, there's a frog in the plant that I'm watering, that's receiving the water. And it's like those moments, if we're not there, we miss them. And, you know, I did receive one of your emails from your Substack. So I was a recipient of one of those, and I loved it. I at first was like, oh, is this for real? But then when I read the content, I responded to you, and that's how we connected. So, and found out that we had a very dear friend in common of Jay.
I think it's a great reminder, and maybe I play with it. That's the next question I have for you. But, you know, for me, it's a play. I write those emails in a playful way. And actually, my wife told me, how about you make some typos because people don't believe it's really you. So I said, isn't it funny that we got to a place where we have to try really hard to come across authentic and real to the point that we make typos that we never make just so that people think it's really you. Isn't it funny? I mean, just to pause for a second, what kind of world we found ourselves in, that we don't believe that a human being wrote an email. I have to include a typo for people to realize there's no way a machine made that typo. And if AI is listening to this, crazy. AI will start to make typos to look real. So I'm not going to say it. But
it'll learn.
Speaking of play, you talk about this dance between depth and play. And you and I are in rooms when the conversations get very serious and difficult. And sometimes maybe we can unlock something by reaching for the play. Can you talk
Yeah.
about it? What can it do for us in those moments where maybe something else can't get us to where we're headed?
Yeah, I think play is a amazing doorway and helps like break up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it shatters kind of the seriousness. And um, so I'm very playful and very spiritual. So that's just part of who I am authentically. So it's easy for me to facilitate in that way because that's just who I am. So I could be sitting with severe pain or whatever's going on with me, and you can see me playing
Mm-hmm.
because that is how I bring lightheartedness into my life.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm working with people, I just pay attention to the energy in the room, or if someone's struggling. And I like to have these exercises that we do when we do reflection. Yes, we're going to deep places, but we might do them drawing with crayons, or we might use like the show and tell type thing, or we might use images to tell our story. So I just mix up the mediums a little bit, and that helps. I remind people, have fun with this.
Mm-hmm.
This is for you. You can do this reflection in any way you like. And I think that giving people permission to, I had a whole room of professionals, with all the colored markers and pastels and pages, and they were drawing and doodling and reflecting on how they receive from their spiritual capital.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were trying to kind of create an image of it. And it didn't have to be art. It's just fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something a different way, but we were doing a very deep exercise. So I think play can, break up things, help us express ourselves when maybe we're having trouble expressing ourselves through our written words or sitting at a table saying, oh, this is how I feel. I've done some training with 2164 too, and they use a lot of that breakthrough and play. Like one of their tools has these little figurines and stuff like that. It's like a role-playing thing, and it's super fun. So you can be a duck or whatever, and you can pick these little figurines to help you
Mm-hmm.
engage in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I love these things too, because then if you're working with multiple generations, children can participate.
Yes.
Because it's the main medium's not writing.
Mm-hmm.
Or something that's reading something, or, they can dance, they can sing, they can act something out, they can draw something, they can hold up a picture, play their favorite song. These are ways for people to connect.
I love the sound of that, and I'm thinking of how I go about moments where I'm running into a wall with any traditional way of doing things. I love writing, but I realize and I embrace a different way of creating my articles. The idea for the article just comes to me, and I ask friends that write, where do ideas come from? And apparently authors say they don't really know where the ideas come from. But I'm curious because you write as well, and I have those moments, and I have a very vivid memory of a recent article that I wrote, and I was walking around New York between appointments, and this idea came to me, and I didn't want to lose it, and I didn't have a pencil, I didn't have a pen with me, and I did what a lot of New Yorkers do, and I started talking to myself with my headphones in, and I recorded myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I rewrote it many times, 20-some times, until it became the article, but I captured the idea, and I did it in a playful way instead of, finding a desk. By the way, I don't like desks. You'll find me on... It's easier to find me on the floor, on the couch, or anywhere else, reading or doing anything rather than at a desk. It's just the way I am. I get more creative. I'm outside of some rigid framework. Anyways, I like that idea of a play. You gave a workshop recently, and it's a workshop that really resonated with me. I'd love to hear more. It was called the Big F Fiduciary, how we care more about not just about people's assets, but we care about them flourishing.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more? What's that about?
Sure. This was really based on carrying on Jay's work around the Big T trustee and his family flourishing model. So I came up with this idea, since I was working with family wealth professionals, of like, let's look at fiduciary, because that's such a buzzword right now. And John A. from Purposeful Planning helped me come up with, I was saying being a fiduciary, but he's like, let's call it becoming a fiduciary. And, Big F fiduciary, and like exploring the virtues of purposeful service. So we're looking at this very professional term that, if you look in the CFP handbook, they give you all the things that it is to be a fiduciary. They give you the guidelines, they spell it all out. And it just is this technical kind of remote thing. But what if we really embody that? What does it mean to be a fiduciary, and a big F fiduciary, which is really looking at a holistic sense, all the capitals, human flourishing, families flourishing, and how can I help, right? Jim Grubman always says that we are a helping profession. And so being a big F fiduciary is looking at how can I help foster the well-being here, the overall well-being, a family's true wealth, and help them connect to it and grow it. And it was really fun to focus in on the virtue of care. And I had people tell stories about someone on their team or in their life that embodies the virtue of care. And wow, some really incredible stories there. But again, it's a way to connect with something. And instead of this being this abstract, oh yes, I'm a fiduciary, blah, blah, blah. I am a fiduciary. I embody the virtue of care. What a difference.
It is.
This is something I'm regulated or, supposed to be, but this is who I am. And that has a very different feeling. And if I can help other professionals connect with that in themselves, then when they meet with their families and their communities, they're remembering, oh, I embody this virtue of care. I care about more than just the family's net worth. I care about their overall well-being and wealth. And I think that is such a big gift that we can help each other with. Because whether it's your profession or not, we're all fiduciaries, big F fiduciaries. We can all be that.
It's a higher calling, isn't it? It's something that we just hear, we acknowledge, we see it. But maybe in the world we live in, we have to be reminded of it. We get busy with other things, and you mentioned rules, regulations, requirements, but they're humans. The one thing I learned about investing, and I picked up a book, One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch, and I got fascinated with the intellectual pursuit. But I tell everyone that I stayed in investing the way I see it for the people I get to work with and the role I can play. I don't think that I love the intellectual puzzle that investing can be, and it is for me. But the meaning behind what I'm doing is what keeps me going, that I can see that I helped. And what I see might not be on the statement, might not be even written down, but I know it, and the families know it, and that's all that matters. Jen, you shared with me that you're writing a certain piece. It might be out by the time this episode airs, I don't know, but you're writing about who will be there for me when I die. And you're contemplating your own death, and it teaches you something about how you live. What can it reveal to us, that experience and that thought process of thinking, who will be there for me when I die?
Yeah, I've been meaning to write on this for a couple of years, but it's taken me a couple of years to be able to.
Mm,
This question arose for me while I was caring for my very dear friend who is dying of ALS. And being with him was the greatest blessing and also just heartbreaking.
mhm,
And it was over a couple year period that I was part of his care team as a healer. And I got to witness what maybe we call dying with dignity.
mhm,
I also got to see firsthand what a lifetime of spiritual practice can do when you become very ill and you lose your capacity to speak, to stand up, to swallow your food. I saw firsthand, like, oh, this is what a lifetime of his spiritual practice did.
mhm,
And then I saw the boundaries being put in place. These are the people I want in my sacred space. This is the care I want to receive. This is there came a time where the boundary became very small, like very closed. So I'm only want to see these people at this point, and the rest of the visitors were just said, I'm done taking other visitors at this point.
mhm,
And just having this intentionality about what he needed while he was sick and dying. It it's changed me forever, this experience. And I reflect on this question all the time. And when we reflect on who will be there for me when I die, it's also looking at who is here for me while I live.
mhm.
And we can't plan for death. I
Right.
mean, death could come at any time, any way. We may not have the opportunity to grow old, get sick, and die. But it doesn't mean that we can't still reflect on what would I want if I could
Mhm,
plan for my death. So this question helped me really look at that for myself. And again, this comes back to receiving, right? As we get older, we have sickness, we need help.
mhm,
We need to be open and willing to receive from people. And what this did for me is, as I reflected on my death and my life,
mhm,
it brought me to having amazing conversations now.
mhm,
And this is why it's so important to do this reflection, is because yes, it's in writing. I made a living will of my wishes, but then I went to different people in my life and I had these amazingly meaningful conversations and just said, if I'm still single when I'm aging or dying or sick, would you be there for me?
mhm,
I don't want to be alone. And I went to some of my spiritual family and I went to some very, very close friends and I had these conversations. And I can't tell you how important it was for me. And whether those things happen or not, we don't know. We don't know how I'll die
mhm,
or what will happen. But I still feel it was a very important conversations to have and very important reflections to do. And so I'm very grateful to my friend for opening up his life to me and his long walk with ALS, and it's still taking me time to integrate what I experienced as I watched him, just be ravaged by this disease. And it was a kind of a selfish thing that I went, "Oh, well, who's gonna be there for me?"
mhm,
Like, it was out of my own fear and anxiety, like, oh, who's going to take care of me if this were to happen? How will I get through this? So it was that too.
Mm-hmm. So many thoughts, and I'm looking forward to reading when it comes out. It reminds me of a certain church in Paris. I went to school in Paris at some point, and at the church there was a sign that said in Latin, "Memento mori," remember that you will die. And I thought that it's such a dark thing to have written, but I changed my mind since. I think it's a reminder of how do we live this life as we remember, as we spoke throughout this conversation. Whatever we think we collect, it might not go with us to the other side. What are the things that matter, that can actually become that legacy that can be passed on and matter to people? Jen, speaking of that, I want to ask you one of the last questions I have for you. I have so many more, but today I have to limit myself. When you sit down with the adult children, and I emphasize adult children, we spoke about it, how some of those moments happen a lot later these days, of high net worth families, the rising generation inheriting significant wealth. What's the one question you'd want them to sit with and ponder, and not about their inheritance or the responsibilities, but about themselves and their flourishing?
What comes to mind is the name of my Substack, Where Do We Grow From Here? Because where do we grow from here is first of foremost is we have to know where we are, where here is. So it's like that first part is, where am I right now? Taking stock in your life, in your health, your vital energy, all these different things. Where am I right now? And what would lend to my well-being and flourishing? What's important to me? And one question that brings you into so many spaces. And I love the idea of, these little sprouts. They have become kind of my trademark, because it's like even this little sprout is growth. And it can be just a tiny bit of growth. So it's not like, it's a great question because it helps us to take time to see, where am I right now? And what seed have I planted or would like to plant? What little sprout would I like to grow? And some people may have, a big oak tree to grow that they want to grow, but they all still begin with this little sprout. And so I like to remind myself and others that, also some growth happens in a place where we can't see it. Underneath the soil, it begins. And so I just give people the opportunity to get to know themselves and get to dream. And what would support that growth? What do I need to receive? What would I like to give? All these things come together in that question for me. So seems like it's a perfect place.
Where do we go from here? How do you think about success, Jen?
I think that for me personally, the greatest success is what I learned from Jim Grubman is to be yourself and share that with others, and find a way to when you honor yourself for who you are, for all the experience of your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is, but all the things that make up you, and have appreciation for that and be authentic with that. Be real. My great friend Ruth died at 107, and she always said, she wrote many books and she was quite a remarkable woman. And she would always say, tell people about your mistakes. Be real. Don't just show them your best side all the time. And so I think like that to me is success, is when you're able to be with yourself in entirety. And for all your good and bad and all these different things, that you have an honor for that and that you are just authentic. I think that's a big gift to yourself and to others.
It's almost not worth considering the alternative, right? Like why waste time and energy trying to be somebody else? I'll share a quick anecdote. I go to Omaha to the Berkshire meeting. I'm at the airport flying back home, and somebody walks up to me that has been listening to my podcast and reading my Substack, and we speak, and then he has this look. He has to tell me something, and I said, "What is it?" And he says, "You're exactly the person I imagine you are in real life after listening to you." And I thought, of course I am. I don't have the time and energy to be somebody else here and then somebody else if you run into me at a coffee shop in Omaha at a Berkshire meeting. It's the same person. Say hello if you see me. But it's a funny thing.
And also, what a great compliment,
Right.
too, that, that your authentic self shine through. I love that.
Right. But the surprise in his eyes, you are the person I thought you are. Isn't it great? I never thought I'd have to think about it, but I think it's a great realization. It's so much easier and so much lighter to live your life if you can be who you really are, no matter the context. And I think it's a luxury and a privilege to be that way every day if we can.
Yeah.
Jen, this was such a wonderful conversation. I can't thank you enough for spending this hour with me and this audience. I'll share your content in the notes so they can find you, follow, and read. And we're all waiting for this article to come out when it does. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. I really had a wonderful time.
You were listening to Talking Billions. We talk about big ideas, big inspirations, big topics. We take on the hardest subject of all, money. But our conversations lead us to an even bigger question: what it means to live a rich life beyond money. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and follow, subscribe, rate, and share with friends and family. We rely on word of mouth to promote the show. One click for you means the world to us. Thank you. Until next time, your host, Bokmil Baron